Hello. I got to interview my dad last week. After a year and a half of not seeing him in person, this made it all the sweeter. I wish I would have had a recorder on the whole time we were together. We were definitely spoiled when we were there. But I did manage to get an hour or so of pure gold for the heart, for my heart, and tons of gems. My biggest concern is that I didn't do it justice, and also how on earth do I introduce this man, the most important person in my life. The first words that come to mind would be inspiring, exemplary, epically solid, and flexible at the same time. In life, especially when parenting, I've asked myself at least 10 billion times, what would Dad do? So, painting a little picture here for you of who you'll meet soon if you haven't already. My earliest memories were of laying on his arm and listening wide-eyed to stories that Dad would spin. And he is a storyteller. So there would be things based in reality, things that he'd learned, all these bits and pieces, and he would just make these magical worlds, always with a moral to the story, and send us off into dream time. So really lucky kids. In spite of daunting injury and physical hardship and challenge that he was either born with or acquired along the way, he's been a lifelong athlete, adventurer, and he's always healed himself with movement and nutrition. His neuroplasticity is off the charts. He has the curiosity of a child and the wisdom that comes from noticing and learning instead of knowing everything. He's constantly refining, reflecting, consistently looking forward, and then seemingly so very present, the most present being I know. If I've done anything remarkable in my life, it's because of his deep belief in me, and also because I think I came from having that solidness in life, in my beginnings, that I could flourish from. He rarely put his foot down with my shenanigans, let me wander far and wide, and you'll see in the interview, this is sort of how he was raised, but he was definitely such a hands-on father. I'm sure he shook his head, probably laughed and cried at the colossal mistakes I've made over the years. Yet he always respected, obviously, my sovereignty and my opinions, and let me learn my lessons. And never once has said, "I told you so." So that's a big thing to plant out there. He coaxes the very best out of everyone. A child, an animal, a cubic foot of soil. He makes the best and he coaxes the best out of everything, out of the day, with appreciation and this true listening. He's inclusive, he's hopeful, realistic, and ridiculously patient, at least on the outside. And so in this interview, I spent some time asking for clarifications on, I have parts of stories I grew up with, and so I'm gaining insight in part of this, and part of it's an organic, meandering conversation. And there's so many gems, so I've only scratched the surface here. Bear with the sounds of life and loved ones, especially in the beginning while we settle in. I'm not editing anything, it's all just right here. And like I said, I feel like I've recorded gold. So without further words from me, I would like to introduce the chef without a recipe, a grower of nutrition in children, lover of life, possibility, adventure, humans and animals, planter of seeds and ideas, father, grandfather, friend, mentor, easer of pain, ender of suffering, grower, husband, fixer, healer, inventor, alchemist, teacher and student, and heroic teller of tales. This is my introduction for Richard H. Espenscheid. Most importantly, my dad. Patience for it.
Is this a good spot right here?
Yeah. So
okay.
we can just hang out and do this. This is Richard H. Espenscheid, my old man, and I'm excited. This is probably the most important. I think this is just one in a series of interviews because there's just so much. But I kind of put together some questions they sound like run-on questions, run-on sentences. And because I know you're a good storyteller, I think the answer to any question with the surrounding story will kind of give us all a picture of parts of your life.
Well, be sure and cut me off if I get too with the rest of the story and
no,
so
that is
forth.
the point, that I am excited that you will be descriptive and go on and on. One of the earliest stories I remember, so for the viewer that doesn't know, my dad is a storyteller, and one of the ones I remember, and I now see more as metaphor, is the story of when you lived in Hawaii and you have a mole on your ear and you were underwater once and there was a sentient alien being that put a transmitter in your ear so that you could communicate always. And I think I probably believed that story a little too long. And then came to see it as metaphor for your love with the sea and the creatures in it. And
yes, and aliens.
And aliens. So tell me a little bit about that. I know it healed you, surfing and being in the water after the war, but you had always loved that, and then maybe the journey to what it is now with that as the topic.
Well, yeah, my love, I think, is with animals, whether they be aquatic or terrestrial, etc. So, I think it's probably I relate more with animals because I feel I can help them more through feed, care, etc. And they're a captive audience. So.
You don't complain a whole lot.
Right, but there's such a pleasure in watching them eat and thrive and so forth. Of course, the aquatic, you didn't have that type of relationship with them, but it was such a different world other than what we're used to. I just felt very at home in water, in the ocean, lakes, swimming pools, whatever. Very at home. It was, of course, a way you could expend a lot of energy. Also, always something to learn, further your knowledge, which only led to more questions and on and on. But great time. And when you tell stories, you usually tell stories of things that you relate to, and maybe the listener might also. So we talk a lot about ourselves when we tell stories because we're familiar with it.
Right.
So was probably the basis, of course, for that. And then, of course, I told a lot of stories about my dad's adventure around the world, which was truly an adventure. Just a great deal.
Right. It's okay, I don't edit, so.
I made you a flower crown.
Oh my God, dandelions! How beautiful!
This is all going to be included.
Okay.
It's all part of the deal.
And he called them periwinkle flowers, so I assume what they are, they're rose tree things.
They
They are, but they're not very.
we'll just let him
They're
talk.
Yeah.
So, with regards
He
to,
said they were
I'll stick with the water for a little bit. I
Mhm.
know you taught skin diving and
Scuba,
scuba diving.
swimming,
After,
etc.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And did you feel, and maybe it was that peace that you felt in the water and imparting a wisdom to other people, which is another, it seems like it's
Yeah.
a multi-layered thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was very fortunate as, I don't know, I might have been 10 to 12 years old. A family friend took me scuba diving, took me under his wing. I couldn't get over, having a mentor
Yeah.
showing you something. And yeah, it just lit a fire under me. So, very grateful for that. And so, maybe all the people that I exposed to scuba or whatever, maybe one or two of them, it lit a fire
Right.
and kind of added to their life, etc. Because it sure added to mine. It just opened up a new world,
Right.
especially to a kid. So yeah, that water's played a big part.
Played a
You
big part.
betcha.
Tell me about surfing. I know what I remember was that it, because it took such concentration. Evita. Okay. The subtle hints weren't paying off there. Yeah, tell me about what the surfing did for your life and what it was like then, because I know it's very different now.
Yes, this is back in the old days, where just like scuba, you didn't have to have a license. I could teach scuba, no license, no nothing. Skydiving, no license, no nothing.
Wow.
Just practice landing, jumping off of a picnic table.
Oh my God.
Kind of stuff. And surfing, I was discharged in Fort Lewis, Washington. I had left my car in San Diego and went down to retrieve it. And took
How long were you gone? How long were you overseas?
11 months.
11 months. Okay, so come back at your
Come
car.
back, went down to get the car, talking to this kid and a few of the other Army buddies, and a few of them had surfed. So I figured I'd stick around. You're, after the service and so forth, you kind of don't want to join society yet. So I said, why not? And first day, I went out and bought a used surfboard. First day, broke it in two. Anyway, it was fun. It was fun. And I figured I'd always need a trade, so I went to welding school in National City, which is just below San Diego. I got an apartment right on Mission Beach, and every day after school and all weekend, etc., I surfed. And at night, I waited tables. So just really felt at peace with it. And then an Army buddy came back who lived in LA, and he said, I hear Hawaii's great. You want to go? And I said, all right. So I went, and we went to Kauai, and whoa, we had 6 straight months of overhead surf, all to ourselves, all different kinds of breaks. Yeah, it was really, really great. But then I felt the need to rejoin society and go back to school, went to University of Hawaii, and I think every day surfed also.
And this is Oahu?
Oahu, and then worked nights as an auditor at hotels, could get my school work done that way. You'd have all the classes in the morning, surf all afternoon. So paradise for the old guy. So had a good time.
Yeah. And it probably exhausted you too. on that
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And in those kind of days, why, I mean, at max 3 hours sleep is all I needed. I can't do it today, of course. So there was plenty to do with your with all that time, all constructive and so forth, and got hooked up with sail racing and so much to do with the oceans. It was cool, and then of course the skydiving and all that kind of stuff. So
and was
much
that
to do.
there as well? Oh wow.
Yeah, just there again, no license, no nothing, just
do it.
just do it.
Just meet people along the way, and
Exactly.
it all sorts out. What were you studying there?
Business.
Okay.
I figured whatever you do, you'll need a business head.
Okay.
Yeah, and you know, my dad was an entrepreneur. There's a lot of advantages to having your own business, but you've got to be a jack of all trades.
Right.
And having a business head is an integral part of it, of a successful business. So,
Can apply it to anything.
yes, yes. So, courses and time well spent, I thought. So that was 2.5 years in Hawaii. Didn't see a future there. Most things were expensive. Most land was only leased
Okay.
for a period of years, etc. So, yeah, 2.5 years, very good years.
And when was it that you studied? Because you were thinking of going into the medical field.
Yeah, that was all before the service. I was drafted when I was just ready to start my second semester senior,
Okay.
University of Illinois.
Okay. And so that's why you were a medic in the war. Because
Well,
you had
anybody-
some background in that.
Anybody who said they wanted to be a medic, you got it.
It's kind of like skydiving and scuba diving. That's what you
You
want.
got it. Yeah, you betcha. They didn't turn anybody down for that. Yeah, they gave you a test after you passed your physical and so forth, and a bunch of questions and problems, etc. Then you handed in the paper, and the guy looks over the paper and says, "If your name is on the top, you're in." But they did score them.
Okay.
Because if you applied for things like officer training or whatever, you had to have a certain score,
Okay.
that kind of a stuff. And if you said you wanted to be a medic,
They
you
needed
got
it.
it.
Okay.
Yeah. So it worked out good.
Yeah. And did that make it, that I suppose made it more tolerable because you could put people back together, hopefully?
Correct. Correct. No, so that was all fine. I thought I was very well trained for that stuff, having gone through 2 years of grand rounds with other doctors while I was in high school. I'm not afraid
So
of
you
blood.
did that in high school? You could
Grand
do that,
rounds,
that
yes.
practical type of learning?
Right.
Wow.
Yes, thank goodness, family friend. I told him my interest and what can I do to further my education. He said, show up every Saturday at the hospital for grand rounds. And here's a group of doctors going from interesting patient to interesting patient. Each doctor introduced the group to his most interesting patient and what they did about it.
Oh, wow.
And either got a response or failed to get a response.
Okay.
And here I could traipse right along with them. So, pretty interesting. And then being a candy striper at hospitals and so forth.
And is that something that was fairly common then, like candy striping or volunteering different places, or?
Well, I think as now I think it's much more so because it's required.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to apply for medical school,
Mm-hmm.
they want at least 3,000 hours of volunteer work
Mm-hmm.
in the field that you want to go into
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that you understand what it's all
What you're
about.
getting into.
Yeah, we don't want you going through a couple of years of medical school and dropping out because you can't,
Stomach something.
Right.
or-
Right. So, yes, they require it now. Most, as a trainer at OHSU, most of the people I get to train by far are people who are either going to go into pre-med or are in pre-med.
Okay.
And so they're filling out their volunteer hours.
Okay.
And sharp kids.
Mm-hmm.
Sharp kids. So I think it's a good program
Right.
to get your feet wet before you decide to dive in.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm all for that kind of program.
Right. So that background prepared you somewhat for being a medic in Vietnam. And I know when I traveled, that's been a lot of years ago, but when I was there and could find an internet cafe, I would check in and you would kind of have guessed where I might be going next. And then you'd maybe share what was happening in those areas. And I know we both had a real affinity for those people.
Yes.
What struck you as some of the finest traits or the things that the takeaways from those people?
They were always willing to share.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you walk by a family cooking,
Mm-hmm.
they're just sitting there squatting, cooking and eating. They would signal you to come over
Mm-hmm.
and sit with them and eat.
Mm-hmm.
They were very ambitious, busy people. They were clean.
Did everybody have lines of her in the dishwasher?
Yep. So yeah, that's what I enjoyed about them. Even though they had dirt floors, they had brooms. They kept things clean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought they did the best with what they had,
Right.
and they seemed happy,
Mm-hmm.
with it, with their life and so forth. So
Mhm.
yeah, no, very, very nice people.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so from there, the ocean, we'll just say the ocean healed you, but you knew your time in Hawaii was enough. And when did you kind of come back to that love of animals for your
Yes.
living?
Well, at one of the hotels that I worked at, there was an old couple, and he was on blood thinners and poor eyesight, very sensitive eyes, so they only went out at night
Mm-hmm.
and would come back at the wee hours of the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, who's there? Me.
Mm-hmm.
And I take them to their room as you would normally do. Their eyesight's not that well, and so forth. And you talk to them and this kind of stuff. And then one day they just said, "Why don't you come to Montana? We have a big ranch. We've got a job for you." So I think it was the second year they were there. Towards the end of the second year, I got their name and their address and said, "Yeah, if that's what I, decide to do, I'd feel privileged to get a job."
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to Australia, believe it or not. In my mind, I even had the shipping crate for my motorcycle
Okay.
to go over there. And I decided, well, why not just, here's an introduction and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote them a letter. They said, "Come on." And when I got there, it was lambing
Okay.
and calving
Wow.
and just a beautiful, beautiful place. Just
Mhm.
fell in love with the whole thing. And of course, their granddaughter is who I later married, thinking I'd get the ranch.
You just got some kids.
Right. So yeah,
So you were thrown right in the fire, all the animals being born, and
well, yes, I had the best mother in the world. She would let me keep any animal I drug home. And I had all kinds of animals. So I was able to grow up with fish, cats, dogs, guinea pigs, birds, crows.
and
you
you
know,
lived in town, right? Kind of.
We started out in town, then the suburbs, and when I was I think it was 14 years old, we moved to a farm.
Okay.
Yeah, so my dad had horses and he wanted a place to ride. So rented the land out, and I I thought it was an opportunity. Went around knocking on farmers' doors. First one gave me a job, and that was driving tractor. And the person the folks bought the farm from approached me with a business opportunity. He said, look, you can't get chickens like you can raise in the store. He says, if you'll raise me 50 chickens, I'll take the roosters, you take the hens, I'll pay for the feed, and you'll end up with these hens and plenty of eggs.
Wow.
So I took him up on it. Of course, I cleaned out the barn, and that's how I got the histoplasmosis. But it was a great business. I enjoyed it. I could exchange eggs for anything.
Okay.
I could take them to school. The teachers would snap them up.
So it was a currency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I had extras, you could go to any supermarket with your eggs. They would just open the
wow.
cash drawer and give you the money. There's no inspection, no
Not
nothing.
so much regulation.
No
yeah.
candling, etc. The store people, they wouldn't even look at the eggs. Just how many dozen? This is here's your money.
So being a child entrepreneur actually was really rewarding.
Well, when you got your own money that you've earned, it is liberating.
Yeah.
It is liberating. And of course, I was a squirrel. I put it all away, type of stuff, etc. So for me, it just opened the world. You could do so much with that. So nice opportunity.
Yeah,
It was
pretty
a lot
cool.
of fun.
Yeah, Grandma told me once that she'd open the door to your room. I think this was the one in town, and there'd be some new animal or some injured animal that needed help. My favorite story, and I'd love clarification on this, would be the crow that you raised and taught to have speech.
Rupert.
How'd you get Rupert?
I have no idea.
Okay. Yeah, I remember your brother shot him out of a tree, or there were a number of babies,
my
maybe.
brother went with a pretty rowdy group, and they raided a crow's nest. And I think there were three of them. There were 3 crows. Everybody got a crow. Well, of course, my brother brought it home, and the thing just cried for food, and it just annoyed my brother. So he gave it to me, etc. And the rest is history. We really bonded. Just a great animal.
And did you let him go every day, and he'd come back with? I just remember shiny things.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. He would bring you back all kinds of shiny things, whether it was tin foil, a marble, or whatever. But it was a while before he could fly. Crows are nurtured probably the longest of birds
Oh, okay.
because they're so high in intelligence. It's just like humans. The nurturing period is very long. Other things need no nurturing. I mean, they're born knowing everything they need to know, and they forage right away. But crows is quite a while. And so there was a long period of attachment, and but I only caged him at night, so let him go in the daytime. And when I was home, he'd always follow you around, whatever you were doing. And there's something about a tame crow that wild crows seem to seem to understand. And of course, there's a lure to be assimilated. And so he would go out and he'd come back being chased by crows.
Okay.
Back and forth. And one day he didn't come back.
Okay.
So either he got accepted or, you know, they got him and ganged up on him. I don't know. The same thing with my rabbit. But it was a much more amorous
Yeah.
deal. I always, you know, be free and so forth. And one day there's another rabbit there.
Brought the rabbit home.
And pretty soon they're real buddies, and pretty soon they have their own hole in the ground.
You moved on.
Yes, yes. So,
So pets that got to roam free.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That was kind of my philosophy, is that's what they give them a choice,
Right.
type of stuff. And
And it sounded like your mom and your parents just kind of just fostered that, or just let you do what
Yep.
you please.
yep, absolutely. So perfect parents for me. It worked out very well.
Could adventure around. I remember something about I'm not sure if it was a bicycle trip or a motorcycle trip when you were fairly young. I'm not sure if it was around the country or not. Does that ring a bell?
Well, I got I think it was a 200cc JB,
Okay.
and went to Denver and through the west, and then I too underpowered to make it over the mountains.
Okay.
So I hopped a bus, went to California, panned some gold there, you know, just messing around, whatever. And I think I took the train back to Denver, got my motorcycle, and headed back.
Okay.
Kind of an exploratory deal.
And at that point, it was fairly reasonable to hitchhike too. I know
Oh, that was another trip.
that was another trip. Okay.
Yeah, that was a trip. I decided to go to the World's Fair, which I think was in '61, was it?
Okay. So you were born in 45, so
Yeah.
you would have been, do the math, 16,
Yeah.
15.
I think I couldn't drive at the time, so probably 15,
Okay.
I would guess. And anyway, I got out there by various trains, buses, stuff like that, and then, you know, toured the West, and then decided, well, why not just hitchhike back? Wonderful move. The people I met, just great, great people. And in, I think it was Idaho, this grandmother with her grandkids dropped me off, and I went to hitchhiking, and this teacher picked me up. And we got to talking and so forth, kind of hit it off, and he said, I'm touring the national parks.
Oh wow.
And he says, do you want to come along? And I said,
Jackpot.
so we went all through Yellowstone, the Tetons, South Dakota, the Badlands, the Black Hills, that kind of stuff.
Wow.
And so in South Dakota, you know, he was heading back, so I hitched the thumb again. And, you know, the rest was pretty uneventful.
Right.
Going through Minnesota and so forth. So, yeah, I hitchhiked on home for that, and time for football.
Just in time for, okay, so that was your summer off from school.
Yeah.
You did all that. Okay.
Right, right.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, no, a nice trip.
Yeah.
Nice trip.
And would you say that was common then? Just to take off?
Much
that summer?
much more than today.
Okay.
Yeah, much more. I mean, to take off with your thumb or
Right.
public transportation.
Yeah, I remember at one point you just asked me never to do that. hitchhiking.
Well, it's more accepted in like Europe and other
Right.
places. Here it just became unaccepted, or not as prevalent. Some horror stories,
Right,
excuse me, and so forth. Yeah.
right.
So it's something you very, very rarely see today. And people just take either public transportation or fly or whatever.
Yeah, don't get the adventure in between.
And you don't meet the local people as much. But no, it is what it is. You can always stay at B&Bs, and there's various things that you can do to keep the local touch wherever you go and so forth. But it was a golden age, and I enjoyed it.
I seem to remember, now this is fast forwarding a bit to the ranch in South Dakota where people would get dropped off and come and ask for work, and usually shearing sheep, right? Were they from New Zealand, or am I imagining that?
Most of there were the start of Mexican crews
Okay.
coming and doing it, but that was still when there were a lot of locals that sheared and set up crews. So, we just had 300 sheep. That was pretty good for 4 guys.
Okay.
They could knock that out in a day.
Oh, wow.
We had our neighbor who had 20,000, and he would shear for 10 days straight. So, but yeah, whichever crews were going through or around, you'd take and get the job done. The whole idea of the shearing, the way we did it, I would buy Gummer ewes out of Wyoming.
What does gummer mean? Is that
They were 5 years old,
Okay.
and because Wyoming is mostly sandy and short grass, they would polish their teeth off in 5 years.
Okay.
So they were worthless to Wyoming and the type of grass. I'd buy them for $5 a head, put them on alfalfa, they would just blow up. And then put the bucks in, they'd all twin and milk like crazy. And then when you weaned the lambs off of them in the spring, you would lamb in January, in the spring wean them, you'd sell the ewes again for $5. Plus you got to save the wool, and you got at least 2 lambs out of them. And you didn't have to keep them over the summer on grass. We were grass poor. Almost everything was farm. So that system worked very well for us.
Timing and using the season.
Yeah, and there was a decent price for wool, lamb, etc. And you lambed early like that because of the Greek holidays and eating lamb, so there was a good price for lamb. When is it? May or something like that? So good timing to have sheep with that kind of a setup.
Schedule, yeah.
Right.
And so you raised quite a few animals. They probably timed out differently. What would you say if you had to pick one animal to raise was your favorite?
Hogs. Such smart animals. Such smart animals. And even in South Dakota, pastured them most of the year. So, they had big acreages to roam and root and so forth. Very, very smart animals, very prolific. And at that time, they were the mortgage lifter.
Okay.
There was a good price. A matter of fact, the price then was better than today. Very, very good. So, it started out as an economic choice, but boy, what neat critters that they were. So, I enjoy it.
The hogs.
Yep. Yeah, efficient, great feed converters. You could raise all their own feed on the place. The only thing you'd have to buy is mineral.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it sure made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And you could sell them on great yield. And I artificially inseminated and had clean-up boars, so you could get the carcass that paid very well.
Mm-hmm.
Would get a good great yield. So the bonus on those type of hogs versus the big, fat one,
Right.
and with the proper nutrition, they'd be gone in 6 months from
Wow.
birth to being gone. So there's quite a turnover.
Mm-hmm.
So I could lamb out in January.
Mm-hmm.
Those same jugs that you put the sheep in just to marry up with their newborns,
Mm-hmm.
they're only in there to dry off a day or two,
Mm-hmm.
then they're out. Well, you're done with lambing by March.
Mm-hmm.
Those same jugs, you put the sow in when she's ready to birth,
Mm-hmm.
and in a couple of days, she's ready to be up and out, and the pigs follow.
Mm-hmm.
So using the same facilities
Mm-hmm.
worked out pretty well.
Yeah, just noticing the natural cycles and working with all that.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And then in the fall, you get another litter.
Mm-hmm.
So worked good.
Mm-hmm.
It worked good in South Dakota, worked good in Wisconsin also. So I'd take hogs.
Hogs. Stick with the hogs. Yeah, I remember watching them follow you around in Montana. Just kind of wherever you went, they wanted to go, and you
Yeah.
knew them by name,
Right,
and
right. No, very personable. Yeah. And if you could give them a great life, it was so good to see healthy things. I never treated a pig in Montana. Never had to treat an animal with any medication, good old open air type of stuff.
They were just healthy.
Right, right. Always had plenty of food.
Mm-hmm.
Food and fresh air.
Food and fresh air.
Yep.
Pretty cool.
Well, no secret, but it sure works.
Right. Let's see. I have my little question. Oh, here's a good one. So I remember, here's another story. I remember something about, might have been the Boulder River. Did you take some inner tubes and inner tube the Boulder
Colorado
the
River.
Colorado River?
Colorado River.
Right.
You
Boulder
you
Dam.
bring out all my wise choices here.
I remember this being a good one.
Yes, yes. So this is when I had the motorcycle, and I decided, why not float?
Mhm.
And I put in, I forget the name of the city now, Glen Ellen Springs, I think it was. And I got 2 inner tubes, one for me and one for the food. And off I went. And then I heard a roar. And then I lost the food. And I spent the whole day swimming, boy.
So was it a flood that came up behind you? Or?
Oh, it was rapids.
Rapids, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it was a lot of fun, but
Yeah.
holy cow, I was ready for a nice float and looking at this canyon.
Yeah, your sandwiches.
And everything, and it was pretty late that night or next morning. I made it back, but I had to walk back. But
Live and learn.
yeah, I was not always making wise decisions, but it was fun. And that's what you do when you're young.
Mm-hmm.
You try different things. And
Right. When did you get your first motorcycle?
So I think you could get them at 15 then.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the only thing I had to work at with my folks, was getting permission for that.
Okay.
But got it, and yeah, took off.
Okay.
And yeah, I had a great time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you're young, you think you're the big explorer and seeing the world and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I thought it was,
So you could pack up your tent or whatever you needed?
no, everything I had could be just hooked to my belt.
Okay.
So I just had a poncho, change of underwear, and so every night you could usually find a stream, wash your underwear, wash yourself. Your spare pair was dry the next day, and then you went on. It was simple.
Yeah.
Everything with me has to be simple or I wouldn't do it. So, yeah, a lot of fun. It is fun to sleep out under the stars when you're a kid, make decisions on your own and suffer the consequences. I had a good time. And in those days, there's no credit cards or anything. So you just go and get some traveler's checks.
Okay.
And were accepted by most people, and you sign it in their presence, and it's good.
And that works for cash?
Right,
Okay.
right. So it was an easy way to travel, and you know, never thought of being robbed or anything. But I mean, if you were robbed with cash, it's gone.
Right.
These traveler's checks, why? If you lose them, nobody can spend them. I imagine they could forge, but without identification. Of course, then, without a driver's license, I don't know if I ever had identification. I don't know if it was required.
Just wasn't an issue.
Yeah. I guess times were different.
Kind of different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know when I early on was traveling, I'd check in via email or sometimes some strange calling card, you know, depending on what was available in any of those countries. Now it's so easy to check in. I think people are addicted to that, you know, this is what I'm doing, or letting people know, or you worried. Were your parents, was it just like no news is fine? It was just much easier to be free and not have to be tethered or let people know, or when we're young?
I just would tell my parents, I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when I'll be back.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember them saying anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just go. I remember when I came back, I don't know how long I was gone that summer, and the door was locked.
What the hell?
I had to wake them up. They just unlocked the door and went back to bed.
They just trusted that you had your wits about you and that
Perfect
you'd be okay.
parents. They
Yeah.
didn't worry. They didn't say call every week or anything.
Mm-hmm.
I was always dutiful about sending a postcard.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was the contact.
Mm-hmm.
It was a postcard, penny postcards
Okay.
in those days. And
Maybe
yeah.
that's why you were so graceful with me. You know, I never felt guilted into checking, in.
Yeah.
Or
yeah,
yet there's I suppose, a limit to that.
right. Well, you take, when Dad went around the world, of course, he did part of the paying for it by writing articles for the
Right.
hometown newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
So I imagine that was a way of keeping in touch
Mm-hmm.
with the folks and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And he got, what he said, paid by the word. So he would.
Got to be very verbose.
Yeah. Right. But, those were the times.
Right.
People could be gone for years, and, that's normal.
Wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't a big deal.
Mhm.
That is for sure. Just like reading Undaunted Courage about Lewis and Clark, how long the president was out of touch with them,
Mm-hmm.
etc. The whole world, nobody knew what was going on. Were they
Mhm.
dead? Were they alive? And all that other kind of stuff.
Mhm.
It was accepted. That's the way things were.
Right.
Even mail from St. Louis to Washington, D.C., you're talking a month.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was fast for those times. Yeah, it was a different day and age,
Different pace.
different expectations, and yeah, I'm sure it's very hard for the grandkids to fathom,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff. Just like it's hard to read about Marco Polo,
Mm-hmm.
how long he was gone,
Right.
no word at all, living with your wits
Mm-hmm.
for that length of time. How many, on one of the legs of the trip back to Genoa, or I forget where he was from, Venice, 600 people died.
Wow.
And he just barely mentions it.
Yeah, in passing.
Yeah. Different day and age.
Right.
Yeah, you went to sea, you wrote your will.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they shanghaied so many sailors. People didn't want to go out there. They woke up the next day, they were on the ship.
Oh, wow. You
So,
are going, yeah.
different day and age
Right.
altogether. But the rewards were so big if they made the trip and back with goods, silk, china, whatever,
Spices, yeah.
spices, furs.
Mm-hmm.
The rewards were so tremendous that people took the risk.
It's worth the risk, yeah.
And life has always been like that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to get ahead, there's some risk
Right.
involved. It doesn't fall into your lap. You kind of stick your neck out,
Mm-hmm.
usually.
Yeah, that's an interesting dichotomy, and that's something that's always impressed me about you, is that you're one of the most present people I know, very present in the right now, in any conversation, whether it's with a kid or an animal or what you're doing, and also kind of having that far future
Goal.
investing in the future also, juggling both. Like if you could impart a little wisdom on each of those, I guess I started to look at it, well, in case I live, I want, some comforts for the future, but how do you remain really present? And maybe it was that kind of travel that helped that. And then also, conversely, how have you, because you've been very successful in investing for the future, what would you say are some of the things you've learned that made you the master of both?
Well, maybe as a kid, if you didn't finish your plate, they'd say there's someone starving in China. Now finish your food.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe through that I got the notion I'm never going to starve.
Mm-hmm.
So I've almost always had a garden or food stored somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing with, seeing old people. There were people who were comfortable, there were people who were not.
Mm-hmm.
And, through reading, etc., you've got to have some kind of a plan.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that you're going to go straight towards it. It's not that you're going to not revise it or change it. But you've got to be headed sort of towards a direction of a set goal.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's, it can be as ambiguous as happiness, comfortable, being well off enough to give back, those kind of goals, so that you're saving money but enjoying the present, because money, I didn't think, bought the happiness now. It was the security if you do need it, or if you want to do something good in the future. I've always had a lot of, even as a kid, a lot of money saved. And that just gave me a good sense of well-being. It gave you the freedom to try things,
Mm-hmm.
to stick your neck out. If you failed, you know, no big deal. You've gained some knowledge, and it probably helps you in the next decision, and you've got enough of a cushion in the bank
Okay.
to start over again, etc. I love planning.
Mm-hmm.
I do not seem to have the mentality of dwelling in the past. I think that's just something that I was probably genetically born with, or I don't know what, or I just forget. I
The
don't.
blessing of not dwelling,
Right.
yeah.
I try and remember the lessons
Mm-hmm.
and so forth, but that's it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's trying to move ahead and, to be present in what you're doing today, reflect on it, you know, at night. When I was working, that's how I'd go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Not trying to solve any problems.
Mm-hmm.
That'll rob you of a lot of sleep.
Mm-hmm.
But going over that day, what you learn, what you're not going to do, what you are going to do more, etc., so that you're just incrementally moving in a direction that you want to go in.
Becoming more and more effective and
Right,
okay.
right. Because, especially working for yourself, you're your own biggest motivator.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a boss over you cracking a whip,
Mm-hmm.
giving you job interviews, that type of stuff. You got to interview yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And the quicker you can correct things, the better you're going to be able to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I did it every night,
Okay.
thinking over it, and then go to sleep. Don't solve problems. When you get up in the morning, that's a good time to work on the problems.
Yeah.
Not at
It's
night.
not going to help you sleep.
No,
Yeah.
no. I mean, that was my,
Mm-hmm.
it worked for me.
Right. Yeah. A lot of us struggle with that. So yeah, to reflect on what works and then
Right,
okay.
right. And like on the ranch or farm, always an early riser, and I'd have that good hour and a half
Mm-hmm.
to think over what I was going to do that day,
Mm-hmm.
and then bingo, 6 o'clock, time to start irrigating.
Mm-hmm.
You got your day planned. Of course, it can be modified,
Mm-hmm.
etc. as you go, but you've tried to organize
Mm-hmm.
the day in the morning over that cup of coffee or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and then you got your plan laid out,
Mm-hmm.
etc.
Yeah, I always thought you were crazy, and then once I had the kids, it was like that is gold. That hour and a half in the morning.
It saves you so much
Mm-hmm.
time during the day. You're not a chicken with its head cut off running around.
Mm-hmm.
You're going more in a straight line. Your priorities, your efficiencies,
Mm-hmm.
so you're getting as much done in the proper order of importance.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll always have some things you may not get done that day, but they were a very low priority.
Mm-hmm.
But if things went well, you still had that ahead of you,
Mm-hmm.
and you felt real good if
Yeah.
you got everything done.
Mhm.
So the old carrot and stick kind of a thing. The stick over what you had to do that
Mhm.
day, and the carrot out there with the cream if you got the high priorities done. Why, look what else you could do.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd surprise yourself all the time how much you could get done in a day.
Mm-hmm.
And then at night going to bed, you'd think back and say, that wasn't too bad.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the next morning, if you can improve on that, you set your hurdle a little,
Mm-hmm.
a little higher. But it was all fun.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything seemed like a grand experiment growing up.
Yes, yeah, that it was. And it really helped with gypsum supply,
Mm-hmm.
managing people. And basically treating them like animals,
Mm-hmm.
giving them plenty of freedom
Mm-hmm.
to make choices, not micromanaging,
Okay.
and they thrive on that.
Mm-hmm.
They will exceed your expectations. The right people.
Right.
You have to do some winnowing there.
So you got good at hiring the right people, but I remember you doing that with animals. Each animal, not just had a name, but you knew what to specially feed them or how they might, because it's an individual. So you applied that to the business world then.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you take, especially the most intensive thing on the farm was the dairy.
Mm-hmm.
You had the best records. Once a month they were tested. All the milk was measured. You had a vet come in once a month,
Mm-hmm.
went over every cow, pregnancy tested, making sure everything was going right. You got computer printouts. Well, I don't know if we had computers then, but you got printouts on each cow.
Uh-huh.
Butterfat, protein, pounds, everything. And then each cow, an expert would type for you the shape of the feet, the hocks, the hips, the depth, the size of the rumen, on and on. So that when you artificially inseminated that cow,
Mm-hmm.
you would type what bull would make the corrections on her deficiencies.
Mm-hmm.
To get, the whole goal was to get a better heifer calf out of her than she was.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to hire a lot of experts. Not a lot. I mean, you had a guy come in who would measure all the milk while you were milking each cow, saving samples, analyzing the samples for the different components. Then once a year you had a person come in and grade each cow by their conformation and so forth. So you could pick the bull that would make the best heifer out of that particular cow. And you could see generation to generation what improvement.
Wow, the
That-
science paying off.
Yeah, what that would do. So, things like applying it to like gypsum, why, the Myers-Briggs,
Mm-hmm.
that shows you more how to approach another person
Okay.
so that they,
Based on their personality
Right.
types and their strengths.
right,
Mm-hmm.
etc. So you get to know people better and how to communicate.
Mm-hmm. And probably how to build teams and get the best of people from
Yeah.
people.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, and understand. So, yeah, there's a lot of tools you can use in business
Mm-hmm.
that way, and yeah, use them. They're all to your benefit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
It is.
If you could get everyone on Earth all at once to agree on one topic, and they would agree to it, and any activity that was aligned with that, what would that be?
There's so many,
I know.
and if you exclude one, it could lead to other problems that are worse.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, everybody would want to have everybody live by the golden rule.
Okay.
If you all treated people with respect and
Mm-hmm.
do unto your neighbors as you would have them do unto you,
Mm-hmm.
boy, what a place this would be.
Mm-hmm.
Stop all wars, hunger, and so forth.
Mhm.
It would be a utopia.
Mm-hmm.
So there's probably one thing I can't come up with a fallacy to that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you said, well, end all wars,
Mm-hmm.
well, that would be great.
Mm-hmm.
But does it end hunger?
Mm-hmm.
You still may not have compassion for your neighbor who needs food or help or whatever. So I guess, yeah, if I had to narrow it down to one thing that might be all-encompassing, it would be, the golden rule. Yeah.
Because it can apply to every aspect of life.
Right. And whether you're religious or not, I think you find it in all philosophies,
Mhm.
all religions, all teachings of good,
Mhm.
and so forth. So yeah, I'd say that would be the one thing that I haven't found anything overwhelming
I guess.
that it wouldn't work.
Yeah, it can't be twisted and
Yeah.
not in our favor. Yeah.
Yes.
Based on the golden part. I grew up being fascinated with food because of you. You know, you raised our food and did a lot of cooking, and it's always been a healer. It always seems you could figure out a way to either improve health, or if something was going wrong, maybe try a piece without. Talk to us a bit about your food evolution.
Well, of course, we didn't know near as much about food as we do today.
Mm-hmm.
Being raised, I would say the food was good.
Mm-hmm.
As we got towards junior high and high school, the convenience foods hit our home.
Mm-hmm.
This frozen dinners, the prepared foods.
Mm-hmm.
I think at that time, my swimming coach and my football coach were big influences.
Mm-hmm.
They preached wheat germ, good square meals with
Mhm.
vegetables and meat and potatoes and so forth, getting your food groups. And like whether it was chicken, vegetables, whatever you ate, in those days, they hadn't been geneticized like they are today.
Okay.
So it was, I think, a lot easier to get good nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
And then through the coaches, stay away from white bread, wheat germ, stuff like that. So there was talk.
Mm-hmm.
But as we have gotten more knowledge and understand the difference between processed foods and whole foods, etc., probably didn't affect us as much because we raised our own.
Mm-hmm.
It was my dream to raise a family on the same milk cow.
Mm-hmm.
Supply all your own meat and vegetables and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So it was pretty much a dream to start with.
Mm-hmm.
And then you do more and more reading
Mm-hmm.
as chemicals became more a part of farming, as breeding up of wheat and corn, etc. Yeah, you started reading some various articles questioning that,
Mm-hmm.
what that was doing. It was a long evolution,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess I would say a lot of variety of reading
Mm-hmm.
educated me into choosing to forego the chemicals, the organic route, and so forth. So, that didn't hit till the 80s and 90s,
Okay.
that they started organic and getting away from that kind of stuff. So the reading then, made a big difference.
Mhm.
But yeah, before that, there weren't many chemicals. There wasn't the meat you ate wasn't treated. There wasn't these growth stimulants,
Mm-hmm.
that type of stuff.
Okay.
So it was easier to get good nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
Farmers were not huge in fat. They did a lot of manual labor.
Mm-hmm.
You see now, whatever your trade is, there's a lot of obesity.
Mm-hmm.
Well, back then, it just wasn't a problem
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't fried fast food, processed food, to the degree of today.
Right. Okay.
I remember the first McDonald's I ever saw. It's a phenomenon to us then, but to you and the grandkids, it's an everyday thing.
Right.
So yeah, different times than today.
Do you see it swinging back with?
That's my hope.
Right.
That's my hope. Education, if you look through history, it seems to repeat itself.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. The knowledge is there.
Mm-hmm.
Will people adopt it? I'll stay positive and hope they do.
Mm-hmm.
That this becomes more and more accepted. I've heard the figure 10% of the people can put it all together
Mm-hmm.
by getting enough sleep, reducing stress, nutrition, and exercise.
Mm-hmm.
That's 10%. That's a figure I have read.
Mm-hmm.
That's sad.
Mm-hmm. Leave 90%.
Yeah. So, with all the knowledge that we have today, let's hope that 10% figure expands exponentially.
Amen. Okay, you mentioned exercise, and that's another thing that I think I was lucky enough to have instilled in me. What was your? Obviously, you're always active. I know you've talked to me about going ice skating for just days on end on the rivers. What were the different activities and sports in your life?
Well,
That progression.
I found out through 23andMe that I'm more Neanderthal than a lot of people, so I don't know if that trait is it. I don't know. I'm fortunate I have a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I love to go and do things. So, that's a trait that I've tried to funnel and be beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's worked well for me to funnel it towards exercise, work. Yeah, it's probably, I'm guessing, genetic. I don't know, I seem to have woke up, and it was probably puberty, but I was lazy, and I was overweight until I was, 13,
Okay.
14, something like that.
Well, and you had a hernia surgery when you were 5.
5.
And
I was
you were
born with that.
You were born with a hernia, and your feet were
Backwards. Right.
So tell me about, because I know I probably am remembering it wrong, but tell me how they broke your feet around and what maybe those early things did so that later you had to pay attention to.
Yeah, that could have a lot of influence. Yeah, born with my feet backwards, the doctors figured the thing to do was force them forward. Now, of course, I don't remember this, but I think it was from 2 to 3 that they put braces on me, and every work day, Mom would take me to the doctor's office, and they would tighten them, and I would cry myself to sleep. So she said that went on for a year, and then from then, they had me wear my shoes on the wrong feet. And I remember that, of course, and walking to school, being painful and so forth. And I believe the knees suffered from that, and has been the cause of a lot of knee pain until I was about 40, and then I found out I could run without pain. And that's when I became a amateur out there having fun. And it was fun. And then one day, one of the guys at work just said, you know, they have marathons
Mhm.
and they're 26 miles long. I said, nobody can run 26 miles. He says, sure they can. Well, if they can, I can.
Mhm.
So I started training, having no idea I could run 26 miles,
Mhm.
and then entered a race, and you could.
Mhm. How about that?
So yeah, it surprised me.
Mhm.
It surprised me. But what surprised me too was how much I loved it.
Mhm.
And so, of course, did again and again. And I think that running was such a healthy outlet
Mhm.
of energy. So, yeah, I kept that up till I was 60, and then here comes the knee replacements.
Mhm.
But I think the knee replacements, you know, that was due to the troubles I've had with knees. It wasn't due to running.
Mhm.
Running may have hurried it up a bit,
Mhm.
but yeah, I just think that, you know, that forcing the feet forward,
Right.
that's a lot of stress.
Yeah.
And I always had trouble with the knees as a kid until I
Okay.
was 40.
Okay.
So,
But none of these things ever held you back from football or
oh, it's painful.
Well, yeah.
It was painful. But that's why instead of going from football to basketball, I went from football to swimming.
Okay. And then swimming could restore you and
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And then in the spring, I did track, but I did pole vaulting,
okay.
where you're not so relying on your legs,
Mhm.
your upper body.
Mhm.
So, and there again, a lot of fun.
Right.
A lot of fun.
So
I
you
think
had
I would have gotten in trouble if it hadn't have been for sports. If you
Right.
got all that extra time.
Right. What are you going to get into?
Yeah, it was a very healthy outlet
Mhm.
for me. It got me through high school, which I did not care for.
It just wasn't engaging.
I didn't think so.
Mhm.
I didn't think so. Not till I got to college.
Mhm.
Then I was totally engaged. The
Mhm.
teachers were phenomenal. The students were motivated.
Everyone was choosing to be there, maybe.
Correct.
Mhm.
Correct. So yeah, it was great. Great outlet, athletics, and I just kept it up,
Right.
and it served me well
Mhm.
anyway, and very happy about that.
Pretty cool. All right. 2 final questions. What is the hardest thing you've ever had to do?
Oh, get through divorce.
Mhm.
Terrible.
Mhm.
It just escapes you. Just don't understand. Crazy.
Mhm.
It's absolutely crazy. Yeah, and what it does to a family and so forth.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was, oof. Yeah, that and of course, you know, Vietnam, as long as you couldn't understand, you know, what man was doing to man,
Mhm.
but you could understand your job,
Mhm. So that gave it some sort of
focus.
focus to get through it.
I could do some good,
Mhm.
etc. So I'd pick those 2 out
Mhm.
as the you know, the toughest.
Alright.
But it gives you assurance that you can get over anything
Yeah.
if you've gotten over that.
Gotten through those things. Yeah.
Right.
And then what would be your very like your finest times, your favorite things in life?
It might be trite,
Mhm.
but seeing the birth of your children,
Mhm.
it'll change you. So yeah, I'd say that. Just great.
Mhm.
Oh, what other fine time. I think waking up every morning. The things you can do.
Mhm.
It's just wonderful. And the last thing at night, thinking over the accomplishments.
Mhm.
You got to have good times every day. That you do.
It's not just the goal; it's the journey.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the good parts too.
Mhm.
Yeah, don't dwell on the bad. learn your lessons from them.
Mm-hmm. Try not to repeat them.
Oh, yes, yes, amen. No, I hear you.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really fun having, you were there pretty quick after the birth of, when Veda was born. And I could just see, I could almost look forward to being a grandparent based on the look on your face, where it's just like, I get to experience this again, but I don't have to be responsible for it.
Yes. Well, very fortunately, I had very cooperative children,
Mm-hmm.
and raising them was fun.
Mm-hmm.
It really, really was. You have a purpose in life,
Mm-hmm.
and you learn what not to do by being raised by your own folks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it was a lot of experimenting, but a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of fun. Having that purpose in life,
Mm-hmm.
great,
Yeah.
just great.
Yeah, and you definitely seem to know. I mean, it's easy for me to say in retrospect, but I know how you raised me without you never bossed me around or told me what to do, because you probably maybe knew it would backfire. But there was always, like, anything I ever needed, all the tools were always there, and just that solid sense. I always had that solidness, and it seems like that's how we can flourish.
Exactly. Yeah, don't micromanage. Let people explore,
Mm-hmm.
see what they like, what they don't like, and yeah, it was so much fun raising you kids on the farm.
Mm.
It really was.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing you're safe, you guys could play all day, and
Mm-hmm.
we knew everything was fine.
Mm-hmm.
Stay-at-home mom.
Mm-hmm.
I was, almost within shouting distance. And, it just felt so good
Mm-hmm.
doing it that way. So I know most people have to live in a city, but I think I was very fortunate
Mm-hmm.
being able to be in the country.
Mm-hmm.
I'm raised in the city, but I think it gave me a perspective. No, this isn't what I want. This is what I want.
Right.
And that's what I enjoyed.
I think it turned out well.
Very good. I do too.
We agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
You betcha.
Very cool.
It was very nice.
Episode 1. I can think of all the things that I forgot to ask about. Yeah. Yeah, and it was really